Hey everybody, and welcome to episode number 37 of the Kickabout with me, Chris, and as always, Dan and Fran are with us.
Hi.
Format for this evening. So we have got a guest on tonight. We've got our man Josh back on the show. I was trying to get a Fulham fan to come on, but I wasn't able to secure his services for the evening. So what we decided to do is get Josh back on the show since he was such a great guest earlier. In fact, I think he was our first guest, wasn't he? So we'll get him on the show, and we're going to talk about some of the ESL stuff and get his view on what it's like to look from the outside in as a fan of a big historic English club that obviously is not involved in that ESL breakaway bid. So we will get his views later on. So as always, we're going to start with this. Down the stat, man.
So it was a bit of a rubbish week for stats this week, to be honest. But I've gone for no team have conceded more Premier League goals from outside the box this season than Sheffield United. Only one other team is level with them. Do you know who it is?
Outside the box.
Outside the box.
Okay. All right, that's an interesting little stat. I mean, it's got to be one of those teams down the bottom, isn't it? Surely the one who's conceded the most, but we'll have a stab at that later. In the meantime, we're going to talk about Spurs, Fran. So Spurs against Sheffield United yesterday. Gareth Bale putting Sheffield United to the sword at White Hart Lane with a really good display, and an important win for Spurs. Bounced back after a very disappointing cup final last weekend, and they're still in with a shout at the top four. Fran, do you think they might sneak in still?
Well, let's put it this way. I actually wanted to watch Tottenham on Match of the Day this week, and usually let's skip it. I don't know. I mean, yeah, 4-0, fabulous, absolutely fabulous, but it was against Sheffield. So I don't want everyone to be getting their hopes up that Tottenham are suddenly back in action. But I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say top four is out of the question, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's 5 points in it with 4 games to go. So you are heavily reliant on Chelsea screwing up in the same way that West Ham and Liverpool are as well. I mean, it's very much Leicester's and Chelsea's to lose at this point.
Yeah.
As far as Gareth Bale goes, let's start by talking about him and how his season has gone. Now, as you mentioned there, we've got to dampen expectations a little bit by the fact that it was Sheffield United and they've been, just awful this season. But in your view, has he shown enough for Spurs to suggest that he might be worth a punt if they can make the financial side of it work?
What, as in keep him?
As in, well, either on a loan, or a permanent transfer, one or the other.
I mean, yeah, I kind of wish he got played a bit more, to be honest. I don't know why, obviously at the beginning, but I don't know why recently he hasn't been played more. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't get that. But yeah, I mean, I think he should stay and play a bit more. What do you think?
I just don't think Spurs could afford him, to be honest. Because I think, for me, I feel like Bale would be happier with his 600 grand a week sat on Real Madrid's bench than going to Spurs for like 150 grand a week and playing every game.
I guess it depends a bit on his ethics, maybe. But then take him out of the equation, it's still, if they were to stay, it's still Harry Kane, Son, Lucas Moura up front. I mean, that's not a bad front three. So, I mean, I'm pretty easy.
I mean, if we look at how his season has gone, I mean, 16 appearances. I did do a little bit of research earlier. 16 appearances this season for Bale, and of course he's had some injuries to contend with throughout the year, which has kept him out for various periods of the season. But he's not actually completed 90 minutes at all this season. He's had 8 appearances off of the bench, and in the 8 appearances that he started, he's always been subbed. Sometimes, he's come close to 90 minutes in fairness, but more often than not, it's somewhere around the sort of 70-minute mark that he's been subbed. But he's still contributed 9 goals in those 16 appearances. So, yeah, I mean, is the argument perhaps more that he was just massively underutilized by Mourinho rather than, yeah, I guess is that the question? Has he been underutilized by Mourinho this season?
I don't think it's just. I think Mourinho was a big part of that, but I mean, he hardly played for Real Madrid for the last 2 years, so I don't think it would be fair to just chuck him straight into the Spurs team. And obviously it's easy for us to sit here and say, "Oh, Mourinho never used him," but I'm sure. I mean, Mourinho brought him in, so there must be a reason why he never used him.
The problem is with Mourinho is that there is always a narrative somewhere with Mourinho. It's never straightforward. It's never like crystal clear. It's never black and white as to why he's doing something. It's a bit like his treatment of Luke Shaw at Man United or with Dele Alli at Spurs. There's always seemingly something else going on behind closed doors that perhaps we don't know about. So I don't know whether it's because he didn't trust Bale because he wasn't fit enough and therefore didn't want him to play. But in the times that I've seen him, and certainly in the last few months when he has played, I think he's been very, very good. And I must admit, I was very surprised that he didn't start the cup final as well.
Yeah, he's obviously shown that he's still a great player. I think it's just going to come down to one, whether he still wants to stay at Spurs, and two, whether Spurs can afford him.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned obviously about his very high wage at Real Madrid, but I mean, he's been at Real Madrid now for a number of years on a very, very high wage. So, does Gareth Bale strike you as the sort of person, and it's difficult to say not knowing him personally, but do you think he could just turn around and say, do you know what, I've made ridiculous amounts of money at Real Madrid. I'm still making a bloody good wage at Spurs if I go there for 150k a week. I'll just do that because I'm guaranteed to play more.
Well, the thing is,
surely he's got enough money.
Well, every footballer has enough money, but he said halfway through the season that he was happy to see out his contract with Real Madrid, even if it meant just sitting on the bench.
Yeah. And
that to me shows the kind of player he is, that he's more interested in the 600 grand a week than he is in playing. I mean, because he's in his 30s now, he's not, and as a winger, he's only got probably 2, maybe 3 years left if he's lucky. So, to me, it shows that he's more interested in getting as much money out of his career as he can, rather than as much football out of his career as he can.
Yeah, it might. Do you know what? It may well rest on which manager they get in next, because we still don't know what Spurs are doing. I mean, they've gone after I can't pronounce his name. It's the German coach. I think he was manager at Leipzig. He's now going to become the new Bayern Munich boss. They then looked at the Ajax boss. He's decided that he's signed a new contract at Ajax. So the options have become a little bit more limited, and we don't know who Spurs are potentially going for. So it might come down to that. It might be the case that when the new manager comes in, it might be the case that Daniel Levy sort of says, right, the option is there to re-sign Gareth Bale on loan. Do you want him? So it might be down to the manager more than maybe Daniel Levy.
Yeah, and just to play sort of devil's advocate so it doesn't sound like full-on criticism, I mean, could you blame him for choosing 600k to sit on the bench over 150k to play every week? I mean, obviously, we'd all love 150k a week, but if I was him and I was on a 600k a week, I'd probably find that quite hard to turn down and go for 150k.
Considering
instead.
how much you love football, though.
Yeah, but players' careers are very short. Like I say, he's probably got 2 years of his job left, and then he's either going into punditry or management or whatever.
Well, that's what I mean. So if he's got 2 years left, if that was you in that situation, would you not want to play it?
Yeah, well, or do you earn 600 grand a week and sort of. No, I'm saying I would rather he played, but I'm just saying I can see both sides of the situation. I don't know. I mean, if I was on 600 grand a week,
I'd tell you to take 600 grand, man.
And live in Spain.
I mean, it's worth saying that he is only 31, so there's injuries notwithstanding. He in theory he's got another 3 or 4 years left in him yet.
No, I'm just saying that as a winger, obviously your career is a lot shorter than if you're like a centre back or a goalkeeper.
Yeah. But I mean, he could easily, make the transition. Could he make the transition to becoming a central striker in the same way that sort of we've seen Ronaldo do? Ibrahimovic is still going at 40 because he plays. He uses his head to play. Could Bale do the same thing?
I could see him becoming like a cam rather than a striker.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think to me he's more of a. I know he scores a lot of goals, but I could see him as more of a playmaker than a sort of central striker. I mean, Ronaldo's got pretty much everything. He's got height, speed, skill. he can score a goal from anywhere. Whereas Bale, for me, is a bit more of a playmaker.
Yeah, no, I agree. Right, moving on then from Gareth Bale. Did you guys see Dele Alli's new haircut?
You know what?
Yeah,
you put it in the chat, and then it wasn't until we watched Match of the Day this morning that I noticed it, and then Dan was like, "That's not Dele Alli."
I mean, this just struck me because, talking about Mourinho and the way in which he's treated Dele Alli, this just to me felt like, right, the gaffer's gone. I'm going to fucking let my hair down. Literally, I'm going to go out and get a mad haircut. I'm going to reinvent myself. And he's just thought, yeah, this is a new me. But I genuinely thought to myself, of course, good to see Ruud Gullit back playing, isn't it?
Maybe that's why he did it, so that Mourinho would put him back in the team, wouldn't know it was Dele Alli.
Right. So, unfortunately, we need to talk about VAR because, let's be honest, it's such a great, fun thing to do. Now, I should probably append this part of the show because I'm going to go off on a fucking rant here. And boy, oh boy, this is going to be a good one. So feel free to jump in and stop me if I go too nuts here. Ryan Mason, after the game, said that he was shocked that John Fleck escaped a red card after appearing to stamp on the head of Giovanni Lo Celso during the game. Now, did you guys see this?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell personally if it's 100% intentional or not. If I had to choose, I would say I feel like there was intent there. Looking at the way in which his leg moves, if he was trying to avoid Lo Celso, he doesn't put his leg down in the way that he does because he knows he's on top of that player. Whether he knows his head is underneath that, I don't know. But to me, watching that, it looks like there is some intent there. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Do you want to go first? Or?
No, go on.
Yeah, I mean, his leg was sort of quite straight, wasn't it? It wasn't like he was trying to leap over and his leg was sort of dangling. It sort of was quite straight down.
It wasn't like actively trying to get out of the way, was it?
No. Now, I guess the point that I would like to make about this and VAR is just continuing to shoot themselves in. The fact they've shot themselves so many times in the foot, they don't have any feet left to shoot because they've just obliterated them. Last week, we were talking about Fabian Balbuena's red card against Chelsea for West Ham, where he's kicked through the ball, and the natural motion of kicking through the ball has ended up with a red card because apparently, he's endangered the welfare of the opposition player. Can someone explain to me how that is more dangerous than this one?
I mean, yeah, putting it like that, yeah, that's ridiculous.
I mean, VAR actually looked at this and came out and said that because it wasn't intentional, that's why they didn't give anything. I mean, he didn't even get a fucking yellow for it.
No. It sort of ties in with the Southampton one as well, after watching that.
Oh, yes, of course, on... when was that?
Vestergaard.
Yes, Vestergaard, that was it, yeah.
Because, I mean, that was almost the same as the Valbuena one. He's sort of gone for the ball, but followed through into his ankle. But, I mean, he's clearly got the ball way before he's got the player, but yeah.
This is the thing. I mean, when you look at those replays, it always looks way worse, right? I'm talking about the Vestergaard one here. And when you slow it down, you see the fact that he's got the ball and then the sort of ricochet of his foot off the ball has then gone into Vardy's ankle. And of course, it looks awful. But unfortunately, that's the nature of football, right? When you throw yourself into a tackle, you kind of are at the mercy of the laws of physics. He can't just stop himself after touching that ball.
No. When the ball is in the... I mean, if obviously the ball wasn't on the ground, it had some height to it. So, and he's sort of stretching, so he has to go in at that height. There's nothing and you don't go in with a toe, do you? You go in with the side of your foot. So in that situation, I just don't know what else you're supposed to do.
No. And, the West Ham one, for example, last weekend, so that was overturned very quickly, as we said on last week's podcast. So that means that the referees or the FA or whoever it is that looks at it and makes these decisions to overturn these red cards have looked at the exact same replays that they would have had access to on the day and decided that, no, that's not a red card, let's overturn it. So why is it that the referees on the day are not able to make these same decisions? Because at the moment, the FA, or again, whoever it is, are simply undermining the officials on the day because the officials are obviously interpreting the rules that they've been given in one way and saying, right, by the letter of the law, what we're being told we have to officiate by, that's a red card. And then it goes back to the other organisation, whoever it is, and they turn around and say, no, it's not. And that's happening a lot at the moment. And it's making as stupid as it sounds, because VAR has been ridiculous and embarrassing this season at times, but it is making a mockery of it. It's making a mockery of the officials as well.
I think it's the pressure from sort of referees. I think if referees went with their first instincts, we wouldn't have a lot of these problems. But because VAR is there in their ears and sort of saying, you should probably have a look at that, I think that's when that bit of doubt goes into their heads. And then you watch it, 5-6 times, and you watch it in slow motion, and you watch it from 10 different angles, and then that doubt just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you change your mind and give the wrong decision.
Yeah, you almost tell yourself so many times that it's a red that you convince yourself that it is.
Yeah.
But do you know what I'd love to see? There was a game in Australia a couple of years ago where I think it was a pre-season friendly, where they trialed open mic with the referees. I think it was like completely open throughout the game. I don't know if the fans in the stadium could hear it, but certainly the people at home could. And it was really, really interesting to hear the thought process and the decision-making process between the match official and his assistant referees and the fourth official, and just how they go about it. And I would absolutely love to find out what discussions are taking place between Stockley Park and the officials at the game, to find out, how they're coming to these decisions, because at least then we can at least begin to, turn the cogs in our head as to work out why they're making these decisions. Whether it's right or wrong, at least we can understand it. But at the moment, these are it's almost like they're flipping a coin in the air.
Yeah, I mean, interesting part of the Super League, the discussion was that they were going to have mics on referees.
Yeah, I wondered, did they ever say to what extent they were going to have them on? Was it going to be complete open mic, or was it just going to be for, certain decisions like they do in American football, for example?
Yeah, I think it was going to be sort of, what's rugby? Is rugby the entire time, or is it just for decisions?
I have a feeling it's just for decisions, but I could be wrong. I'm not a massive rugby fan. But whatever it is, it works really well in rugby, because I've watched international rugby. I know I've seen it in operation, but I don't know if it's open all the time.
Yeah, hopefully they'll trial at some point. I think it would work, and it would just help with the fans. I think, just so people know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sheffield United's own manager actually said there's no place for that on a football pitch, but the VAR has looked at it and deemed it accidental or unintentional. So even he knows that it should have been a red card.
Yeah.
Right, so let's talk Sheffield United, because unfortunately they were dire again in this game. I think it's fair to say. And this season, 27 losses from 34 games, which is the most they have ever lost in a single football campaign. 4 points from a possible 51 away from home. Has it gone unsaid, actually, just how embarrassingly bad they've been this season?
Yeah, I think because they've almost been doomed from the start, haven't they? It's sort of slipped under the carpet a bit, because I feel like everybody's almost forgotten about Sheffield being down the bottom.
Yeah, it's almost like they've just been, as you say, completely forgotten about that. We just assume that they're going to be, getting relegated, so we just don't give them a second thought. But
I mean, we talk about sort of Fulham and West Brom almost every week, depending on whether they win or lose. And West Brom obviously drew with Wolves tonight, but I feel like each week we only talk about Sheffield if they've been on the other end of a hammering, sort of like tonight.
Yeah, I don't understand just how far from last season that team has come. I mean, if you think about everything that they did well last season, how well they were organised, how aggressive they were, how well drilled they were, they're just nothing. They're just a complete and utter shadow of their former self.
Do you think they can come back up straight away?
The risky thing for a season like this is that even though there is a time off during pre-season, it often is the case that your confidence and your form carries over from one season to the next, which is why often, teams that come up from the Championship have great first seasons, or certainly a great start to their first seasons, because they're still kind of riding the wave from the previous year. So Sheffield United, there is a risk for me that, they're going to have a poor season next year in the Championship. And, I hope they don't get anywhere near the drop, but we've seen it happen before. But equally, they could turn it around. But I think they will need to freshen up a lot of their squad. I don't think there's too many of that squad that are going to be interesting Premier League clubs, would you say?
I was going to say, I was literally about to say the same thing. Usually with relegation teams, you get the vultures of the Premier League start circling. But I can't think of one player from Sheffield that any Premier League club would be particularly interested in, to be honest.
The only two I can think of would be Ramsdale. Now I know he's not had a great season for Sheffield United, but he did have a good season for Bournemouth the year before, so there's half a chance somebody might take a punt on him. And the other one is McGoldrick. Sorry. Yeah. I think he looks decent. I can't see a big side of the Premier League coming in for him, but I can potentially see maybe one of the promoted sides maybe having a go on him.
I'm not sure about a goalkeeper that's been relegated 2 seasons in a row.
This is true. Okay, well, maybe he'll be available for a cut price deal then. Right, okay, let's move on. Let's talk Everton against Villa. Now, Everton just don't want to qualify for Europe this year, do they? They're just like, you know what, we're good this year. You guys crack on. We'll step back and let you guys have it this year.
They started off so strongly, but they've just been so inconsistent. They lose to some odd teams.
Where are they now on the table?
They are off the top of my head, I would say 7th, but.
They are 8th at the moment. They are 4 points behind Spurs in 5th place, but they have a game in hand, as do West Ham, who are currently playing theirs right now against Burnley, and Liverpool also have a game in hand. So, the result actually, they're only 4 points away, as I said, which is kind of weird because they've only won 1 in their last 6. How is it they're still hanging on to the back of the European places?
I think the results have just been so up and down. I mean, Arsenal have obviously been very inconsistent. Villa themselves have been very inconsistent, just behind. Well, the entire, the team battling for top 4 and top 6 have all been very up and down and on each other's heels. And I think that's why it's been so weird this season, because everybody's so close to each other. The only ones that are miles ahead are City.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I would actually, as much as it pains me to say, I would probably throw United in there as well, because they've been very consistent over the last couple of months, bar the odd little result here and there. But the last 7 results for Everton, so they obviously this loss to Aston Villa. They won away at Arsenal the week before. They drew with Spurs, which is, that's not a bad result. But they drew to Brighton and Palace. They lost at home to Burnley. Those are 3 results. A team that's pushing for Europe, you need to be picking 2 wins up out of those games, really. And then they lost to Chelsea the week before that. So when you see those results, I mean, this is a massively missed opportunity for Everton, isn't it, this season? They could have easily been in that top 4 scrap if they'd have converted a few of those draws to wins.
Yeah, and I think with the players they brought in, and obviously having Carlo Ancelotti, Everton would have been expecting at least Europa League football this season, I think.
Yeah. Let's talk Dominic Calvert-Lewin, because, he started the season off on absolute, he was on fire. He was flaming the goals in. 11 goals in his first 11 games in the Premier League. Since then, though, just 4 in 17. He's had 1 or 2 small injuries, which kept him out for a week or 2 here and there when I looked at his stats. But based off that stat, have you been disappointed with him since then?
Yeah, but I mean, it's hard really to say, sort of just point the finger at Calvert-Lewin. I think the whole team have been very poor.
They've all dropped off. Really.
Yeah, so it's a tough one. I don't really want to point the finger straight at him because, at the beginning of the season, I would never in a million years would have even thought Calvert-Lewin would have done as well as he has done. So, yeah, I mean, I've got to sort of say fair play to him for doing as well, and he's got in the England team, so. He's had a good...
On that note, how do you rate his chances for being picked for the England squad this summer?
I think he'll go just because he's been involved so much in the build-up.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, I think he gives us a good second option to someone like Harry Kane. I think it's good to have a backup striker, but also you need maybe a third striker who is a completely, different type of player. But Harry Kane and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I would say, are reasonably similar players. They're both big lads. They can both win headers, hold the ball up quite well. Whereas I don't know who the third choice would be. I guess actually there's a question for you both. If you had to take one of Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Ollie Watkins, which one would you take?
I really actually
Ollie Watkins.
I really like Ollie Watkins actually, but yeah, like you say, I think all 3 of them are the same player. And I feel like having 2 is good, but then I feel like you need a completely different type of player.
So who would be that third completely different type of player, do you think, as a striker?
I'd like someone like Greenwood, just because he's a different type of striker. I don't know if Greenwood's been good enough throughout the season to go, but I just feel like you need that sort of option, someone who's completely different to the likes of Harry Kane or Calvert-Lewin.
Danny Ings, if he's fit.
Yeah, someone like that, because he is a different type of player. Someone like Danny Ings, just because if you bring three strikers exactly the same, it's kind of pointless. You need that option if things aren't going your way to just completely change how you're playing.
Agreed.
It's a shame because I would like to see the likes of Harry Kane, Calvert-Lewin and Ollie Watkins all go. I just don't see the point in taking all three of them.
Yeah, I think, the only saving grace for those players, obviously they'll all be desperate, certainly Calvert-Lewin and Watkins. There is still talk of extended or expanded squads for the European Championships this summer. To the best of my knowledge, it hasn't been confirmed one way or the other whether that's happening, but if it does get expanded, then it might be that there is an extra slot.
I thought it'd been up to 26.
Oh, it has. Oh, okay, I must have missed that then. So, in which case, then that does increase the chances of both of them going, and we might end up taking four strikers.
Yeah, why not?
So, and then while we're talking about Ollie Watkins, so from a Villa point of view, I guess the conversation is kind of similar to what we've just been saying about Everton. That they started the season so well. It's certainly fizzled out a lot more than Everton's has. And I guess if you're a Villa fan, you probably are disappointed, despite obviously what's happened last season, how well they've done this year. You are probably disappointed that they didn't kick on and try and build from that and maybe just push for those European places. Now, I appreciate that they're not exactly a million miles away. They're only 8 points behind fifth place, which is an amazing season. But do you think Villa fans maybe just bit of reality, bit of perspective, and just understand that this is just a very, very good season with a great platform for next year?
Yeah, my message to Villa fans would be enjoy it. You're nowhere near relegation. Enjoy every game. And then next season is when you can sort of judge it and see if you make even more progress. Next season, they need to try and push on. It's going to be hard because I feel like they've gone above and beyond what was probably expected of them this season. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they go for mid-table again or if they do try and start trying to push for Europe.
Yeah, and actually Grealish being injured for as long as he has might be a blessing in disguise in terms to it's just taking the attention away from him a little bit with regards to transfers, because there was still some talk about whether United or City might be sniffing around. I think even Spurs were muted at one point. But the fact he's been injured for a little while, I just feel like maybe that's just taking the heat off. So unless Grealish goes to the Euros and absolutely tears the place up, then I think I'm very confident that Grealish will be a Villa player next year.
If he's injured towards the end of the season, would you still take him?
Ooh,
because he's been out for quite a while now, isn't he?
Yeah, I guess it depends when he comes back. I haven't looked to see when he was due back. I know he was due back not long ago and then suffered a bit of a setback.
I
feel like when you obviously got these expanded squads, it does allow the opportunity to risk one or two players that perhaps aren't quite 100% fit, because you can bring enough players to cover that off if it doesn't work. If we think back to, say, Wayne Rooney, who went to, I think it was either the World Cup or the Euros when he wasn't 100% fit, we didn't take cover. And we massively lost out on that. But I think now with the squad that England have available to them, I think, and the extended squad, as I say, I think we could probably risk taking Grealish if he's declared fit, but just maybe not quite match fit. I think we could risk it and maybe give him a run or two here and there to see if he can change a game, because I think that he still has a lot to offer for England.
Yeah.
Right, okay, let's talk Chelsea Fulham. Another strong result for Chelsea, but one along with Brighton's result away at Leeds, all but condemns Fulham to the trapdoor now, you think?
Yeah, I think the teams above them have all moved so far ahead. I think it's like 10 points or so, isn't it, between them and...
So it's now 9 points between Fulham and Newcastle.
Yes, I think that's too much. With 4 games to go, they've got to hope that the teams above them lose every game and they win every game, and I just can't see that happening.
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting that Fulham have actually got the worst record in the Premier League in the last 6 games, even worse than Sheffield United at the moment. So, unfortunately for Fulham, I was actually going to start talking about Chelsea, but since we're talking about Fulham, let's keep it going with them. I mean, there was so much promise with them not long ago because they kind of went on this unbeaten run where they were drawing lots of games, especially away from home. And everybody just thought, you know what, they've got enough about them. The chat was, even we said on this show that they were going to survive and they were going to pick up enough points to get out of it. But they just haven't converted those games into wins, have they?
No, and they've drawn a lot of games, I think, and a lot of them have been last-minute equalisers. They've, like the likes of Arsenal, when they conceded in like the 95th minute or whatever it was, it's just those sort of games have gone against them, and unfortunately, they've been made to pay for it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That game against Arsenal would have been a massive kick in the teeth. And there have been other ones this season. I remember the West Ham game very early on in the season where they had that penalty in the last minute and Lookman tried to do the dink down the middle and Fabianski just stood there and caught it. Now, it would only have been a point, but you know, when you start totaling up all of these games where you've dropped points over the course of a season, that could be the difference for a side like Fulham between staying up and going down. So I guess same question to you guys. Do you think they'll bounce back? We talked about Sheffield United. How do you think Fulham will do?
I think it depends if they keep Scott Parker, because I know he's been quite heavily linked with Tottenham at the moment. But I think if Fulham keep him and they invest in the squads, then I can see them coming straight back up, to be honest, like they did last.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is a shame because Shearer will kill me, but he's not going to hear me say this until he listens to it back in the next few days. But I genuinely feel like Fulham across the season have played better than Newcastle have. Fulham haven't converted those wins. Newcastle have ground out those victories in horrible, disgusting ways at times, but they've done the job. They've done what's needed, and Fulham have not been able to do that. They've not been able to kind of win ugly, I guess is the phrase I'm looking for.
Well, you've seen the difference in Newcastle since Callum Wilson and what's his name came back?
St. Maximin.
I mean, it's almost like they've had 2 new signings.
Yeah, and that does make a difference when you've got 2 players like that who can make such a difference. And Fulham, unfortunately, don't quite have those star quality players. But I mean, I guess we are talking like they're already gone. They haven't been relegated yet, nor have West Brom, despite their draw tonight with Wolves. But I think it's going to take a small miracle for either of those 2 teams to survive, which means, of course, that Mr. Allardyce's record will be broken. He will finally be relegated with the team. So I wonder what he'll have to say about losing his record.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, 4 wins from 4 games is very hard to do.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, actually, Sam Allardyce said when he had 6 games to go for West Brom, he turned around and said, "Well, it's fine because as long as we win 5 of them, we'll stay up." And then they lost the first one, or got to draw the first one. And he said, "Okay, well, we've got to win the last 5," and then he's drawn again tonight. It's like, right, well, you're running out of time, mate. So, right, let's talk Chelsea. So, I think it's fair to say that we've all been very impressed with what Tuchel has done. Now, I know I wasn't keen to get too excited earlier on when he first joined because I felt like there was an awful lot of excitement around him and I felt like the quality of the opponents they were playing, I didn't feel like they were actually playing as well as people were saying. But I feel like I have to eat my words to a degree now because watching them over the last few weeks, they do look a very, very real prospect now and they're building nicely, not just in the league, to as they've now got a real grip on that top 4, it's very much theirs to lose. But Champions League wise as well, they've got a real chance of being in the final.
Well, even the FA Cup, they knocked City out.
Yeah, I mean, this could end up being a fantastic season for Chelsea, which, you know, when you look back at how the reign ended for Lampard and how badly they were playing at that point, you think to turn around and say you'll get top 4, you know, you'll be in an FA Cup final and potentially Champions League final, it would seem ridiculous to say that at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying earlier that the likes of West Ham and Tottenham are almost dependent on Chelsea or Leicester dropping out. I mean, I just can't see Chelsea throwing it away. They look unbeatable under Tuchel at the moment.
Yeah, I unfortunately I have to agree. West Ham have obviously had 2 bad results. In particular, the Newcastle result. The Chelsea result was to be expected. Chelsea are a great side at the moment, and we gave a good account of ourselves. But the Newcastle result particularly killed us. So, but yeah, I agree. I think Chelsea look really good. They've got a fantastic defensive record. They've got the second best defensive record in the entire league, which is pretty impressive. So, and they've got an amazing squad. I mean, 2 goals for Kai Havertz now, and he's beginning to show his worth to the side, isn't he?
Yeah. Which is, I feel a bit sorry for Frank Lampard. It must be a bit demoralising for him to be watching Chelsea at the moment, seeing what Tuchel's doing with the exact same squad that he had. But
yeah, I mean, I think Lampard, it was just too early for him. I think it's probably the nicest way to say it. I don't think that he's a bad manager because he showed at times that Chelsea can really play. But I think that you have to be able to change your tactics, change your approach, and to suit each game. And I think that sort of ability comes with time. And obviously Thomas Tuchel's managed at PSG for a while. He's managed a long time. So yeah, I think Lampard's time will come. I think we'll see him back in another Premier League team or another top team. And there's rumours that he might be going to Celtic. So that would be something special to see Lampard against Gerrard up in Scotland.
yeah.
So, but another game and another classy display from Mason Mount as well. I mean, we're kind of running out of superlatives to describe him at the moment. Has he surprised you just how good he's been this year?
Not really. I think ever since watching him sort of play for Frank at Derby, I think everybody's sort of seen that he could become a massive talent. And I mean, he's just risen. To be fair, he has risen above expectations and he has become a great player. And it's even better that he's English. It's nice to see all these young English players coming through and becoming sort of superstars. And I didn't really sort of mention Havertz earlier, but yeah, it was great for Havertz. Had a great game.
Yeah, I just wonder, Chelsea fans, obviously, they've had an awful lot of success over the past decade or so. I think I know the stat fairly recently was that Chelsea have been the most successful English side in the past sort of 10, 15 years or something along those lines. But at the moment, you would argue that the vast majority of the Premier League are still several steps behind Man City. So what do Chelsea need, do you think, to do, whether it be recruitment-wise, do they need to cover off certain positions? What do they need to do to get closer to Man City?
I think next year, they've obviously got a bit of a platform now with Tuchel as manager, and you can see they're playing much better football. They're keeping the ball a lot more. I think with all the players they bought this year, they'll be in their second year at the club, so they'll have settled in a bit more. I think if they, buy for a couple more positions, they could be competing with City next season.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for me, the biggest thing is consistency against the other teams of the league. Whoever wins the league, chances are they won't have lost many games against teams outside of the top 5 or top 6. If you make sure that you're winning all of those other games for the vast majority of the season, you're probably not going to lose to the top 5 or top 6 that often if you're, that high up in the table, such as Man City. They've only lost 4 games all season. That being said, so have Man United. They've only lost 4 games all season. But you have to make sure that you beat those teams elsewhere in the league. Those games that you expected to win, you have to go and win them. And that's where Liverpool came a cropper this season, is they started losing to teams like Brighton and Burnley. You can't do that if you want to mount a title challenge.
Yeah. In fairness to Brighton, they've beaten most of the top 6 teams this year.
This is true. Right. Okay. We are going to head for a break. And when we come back, we'll get Shearer on the show and we will talk about the ESL and about the Manchester United v Liverpool game that never was. See you in a minute. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the show. And as mentioned earlier, we welcome back Mr. Shearer, Mr. Josh. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. How are we all? Very good.
We are excellent. So yeah, welcome back. First guest to come back a second time. So yeah, I hope you feel honoured and privileged at being invited back. And it's got nothing to do with the fact that I couldn't get a Fulham fan on the show. But anyway, so one of the reasons for bringing in Josh and obviously changing up what we were going to do tonight is that we felt like it'd be a really good idea to get a feel for what other fans of other clubs feel about the ESL. Now, it's almost certainly going to be along the same lines as everybody else, but it would still be great to hear some differing opinions from ours. So we'll get straight into the Man United v Liverpool game that never was. The kind of fallout from the ESL continues. I feel like as a content podcast, as a football podcast, we could have done, do you remember like the old TV series 24, where you had the dung dung, and then like the four squares would appear with different images. I feel like we could have done this over the last 3 weeks, every single hour, because of the amount that's been going on. And so the weekends, most people will know that we had this massive protest, or the latest protest, I guess, because we've had protests at other grounds as well. But this one actually went as far as resulting in a postponement of the game. Now, we had the fans protesting outside the ground. They were at the Lowry Hotel where the United players are, and they even managed to get themselves onto the pitch. So as a United fan, Dan, we'll start with you. Give me your views on the protest, how you felt about the methods and all that kind of stuff. What was your overriding feeling watching that?
I feel like I should be stood in front of the hotel with a microphone. To be fair, I was sort of disappointed the game was called off, but at the same time I wasn't. I mean, I was looking forward to watching a nice 0-0 game. But from what I've seen on the fan forums and stuff, the idea was to get the game called off because they tried to stop the referee from getting in. And I've seen so much about, United fans breaking into the stadium, this, that, and the other. They didn't actually break in. The gate was open and they let themselves in.
The gate was open. Wow. So are you suggesting it was an inside job then?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it was an inside job or not, but I don't think they were expecting fans to. They knew that there was going to be a protest outside, and I think that's where all the focus was. And I just don't think they sort of were fully organised for what happened to happen.
Well, of course they bloody weren't.
Well, obviously not. But I feel like, if they were to with fans just stood outside with bed sheets and posters, the Glazers wouldn't give a fuck. So I think, this sort of protest was needed.
You're saying they had to go to that length?
I think they had to go to that length because, the game was called off and it would have been news all over the world and the Glazers would not have been able to dismiss it.
But then I know we've had this discussion already, but my issue with it is more that I feel like the fans were trying to make their point that obviously they have this issue, but because they went to the lengths and means that they did, it's kind of overwhelmed the press and the media, and it's not been forgotten about why they've done it, but I feel like everyone outside the world of football is just going to see it as some fans vandalizing a stadium, beating up police, all this sort of stuff, and just being like general yobs, and that's what they're going to be referred to as, kind of glazing over the point that that their actual like genuine issue is with the management of their club. I feel like that might have been because they went so far. It is maybe like glazed over the actual issue to people outside of football. Yeah,
I mean, unfortunately, at every single protest, whether it be football or not football, you're going to get a bunch of twats that are there to just cause havoc.
Yeah, I mean, do you see all the images that there was just like
of them throwing a camera stand and stuff
they were
like
all
that,
just like filming it.
But I mean, like I say, if they'd have just stood outside with posters and bed sheets, like it probably wouldn't have even made front page news. No one really would have cared. It would have been like United fans were protesting today, and it would have been forgotten about straight after the game. Whereas now it's a talking point. We're talking about it now. People are talking about it all over social media. It was in the front page of the newspapers. And that's the whole idea, for it to become a message. And, it's not going to stop there. I don't think they'll try and get the game cancelled again because they've done that and they can't keep doing that. But the idea is for it to not be brushed under the carpet and for it to keep reappearing.
I get that, but I feel like they didn't. I'm fine with them going into Old Trafford. But I feel like there did not need to be the aspect of like throwing tripods around and like throwing stuff at police and things like that. Like,
Yeah,
feel
no,
I don't think they realised Roy Keane was in the gantry. If they'd have known Roy Keane was in the gantry throwing flares at him, I don't think they would have done it, because Roy Keane probably just got up and fucking stared at him.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing was organised. It wasn't like a load of fans just turned up and did it. The whole
Oh, of
thing was
course.
organised. But, I don't think it said in the itinerary, climb up on the goal and
Throw
throw
some glass
a
at
camera
people.
over the stand. You're always going to get a bunch of idiots that do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shearer, as a fan of a club that's no stranger to a protest about their owner, do you feel compelled to do the same thing to try and get rid of Mike Ashley?
I mean, I don't know what else we have to do to get rid of him, to be honest with you. We've tried everything else. We've tried nice, lovely banners inside the stadium. We've tried being angry outside the stadium. But I think with it all, it's a positive and a negative, because I feel as though now that you've given the fans the inkling that they can do this and then get any game they want cancelled now. If they do that, they're just going to be able to just go in front of any game, stop them coming in, stop them at their hotels, because it's public knowledge almost that they know where the teams are going to be staying beforehand. They'll just camp outside and stop other games happening, which is the negative side of things. But the positive side of things, I think it's kind of brought all football fans together in a way, because everybody's against it. Nobody's in favour of it. And the fact that I see like Manchester United or Liverpool teams who obviously we have rivalries with, it's just nice to see that there's things bigger than the actual owners, and the fan bases actually do have a voice and it means something. Because I just feel like with everything going on at the minute, with COVID and all the teams saying, oh yeah, we need our fans back, football's nothing about the fans, but yet you'll happily make them spend all their money to go to like Real Madrid or Barcelona away in a foreign league. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I kind of echo the things that have been said here already, but it is a double-edged sword when you go to these protests, because as Dan rightly said, you're always going to get a couple of twats in every group, in every protest, in every march, and it's those ultimately that potentially detract from the message, again, as Dan has said. Now, when you look at the footage, we've read and heard that both fans and police have been injured. I don't think there's been any reports of serious injuries, but the fact that they've been injured nonetheless, it does frustrate me when I watch that, because I think, you're going there with a just cause. You're going there for the right reasons to try and repair your club, however you want to put it. And when you go down and do that sort of thing, I just don't understand the need for the violence with the police. And I get that if the police just turned around and said, can you leave, please? And they went, okay, and then went home, it wouldn't really be a particularly effective protest or march. They have to stand their ground. They have to get their point across. But to me, that doesn't need to end in violence. It's just so frustrating. And then you see everyone with just their phones out, because everybody needs a clip for social media these days. So, yeah, I mean, I guess wherever you fall in this argument, the fact is that this is a huge statement and quite an unprecedented moment for English football. So I guess now it is what happens next. I mean, do we think that the owners are just going to shrug this off, or do we think that, we're going to see some kind of response, if you like, from the Manchester United owners?
Unfortunately, I think, with the transfer window coming up, I think the Glazers will just try and silence everyone by sort of making a signing. Someone like a Jadon Sancho, and then half the fans will forgive them, and they'll just start to try and turn the fans on each other, I think. And that's the easiest way for them to silence it, because they've already said time and time again they're not going to sell. And why would they? They make so much money off the club. And I mean, there was massive protests before almost every year. But as you see with Newcastle, it's almost impossible to try and force your owner out of the club.
Well, it's even worse when, the owners are almost never there. They are completely, they're not only faceless, but they're voiceless as well, because you just barely ever hear from them. Shearer, do you see anything happening as a result of not just the protests here, I suppose, but the protests from Chelsea fans we've seen fans at the Arsenal game against Everton last week. Are we at a moment where something is going to happen, or do you think that this is just going to fizzle away?
I think it will differ from club to club. I feel teams like Liverpool, with the actual owner coming out and saying, "Look, we made a mistake. We'll go from here," sort of thing. They won't want to lose people like Jurgen Klopp because he has changed the whole dynamic of the club, and you wouldn't want to risk that massive fallout with him going. But I do feel like teams like City have just got so much money they can just laugh it off and be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, that's it." United, same again. I feel like the Glazers, as you've mentioned in your other podcast about, they want the American style where there is no threat of any downfall. So they're just going to be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, made a mistake, move on." And I just think like there's owners there that really is a money machine for them. Whereas others, it's just, I just don't feel like it will be a massive change for a lot of the clubs. I think it will be inevitable that something else will come along and they'll try and get that to happen as well.
I really feel the government should step in with the ownership of clubs, because how many clubs have we seen being run into the ground? The likes of Bury and Bolton and Portsmouth. Obviously, Premier League clubs have a lot more money than these clubs, but I mean, it will happen eventually. All these clubs just getting run into the ground, and then it's as easy as that for the owners to just pack up and move on, and the fans and the staff are left there, with nothing.
Yeah.
Just before we move on, I'm just keen to, I know we didn't have a humongous fan response from this, but Fran, we did have Rob, I think his name was, Rob Tell. He did say something. So what did Rob have to say on this? Because I know he's a United fan as well. So what did he say?
So one of the things he did mention, which I know we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, was that bringing in salary caps to stop spiralling costs so that billionaires are not required to run clubs.
To me, I wholeheartely agree, but I think that we are well past the point of ever being able to put those in to any kind of sensible standard, unless you do it on a very gradual basis over the course of about 10 or 20 years.
The problem with that is you'd kind of need every club, not just in England, but in Europe, to agree to it, because otherwise you'd have the likes of PSG, Barcelona, Real Madrid taking advantage that, someone like Chelsea can only offer 100 grand a week, whereas Barcelona can offer 150.
Yeah, I still think that the salary cap is a good idea, but I mean, I know Pete will be listening to the show, and salary caps have obviously come in in the Football League, and to the best of my knowledge, Pete isn't a massive fan of that, because you end up with these massive divides between the two leagues, because you end up with this, the teams going up then can't compete because they've all of a sudden got a massive salary cap to compete with, and they maybe don't have the time or maybe even the resources to get up to that level with the money that you have to spend to get those players in. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that in principle, it's a great idea, but in reality, I just think there's too many moving parts to it that would make it wouldn't be an efficient way of doing it. I think that you'd have to explore other ways first. Yeah.
And then just in general, he said, I think the Premiership will get smaller in number of clubs and Champions League will get bigger. What do you think about
that? I'm not really sure how that would happen.
The only thing I can think of is that they would reduce the number of Premier League clubs and just push clubs down into the lower leagues and make the lower leagues bigger. But I mean, the lower leagues already got enough teams as it is. I mean, they run on 22 or 24 teams, I think it is. So yeah, Champions League is growing. That's already growing, with these new proposals that have come in or that are coming in, in 2024 and 2025, it's growing already. So, and the number of games is growing, and FIFA and UEFA have somehow made themselves heroes in all of this with this ESL stuff going on, but they are very much still the bad people. They're just less bad people right now, and they will look to exploit clubs. I mean, FIFA have got that Club World Cup that they've been desperately trying to ram down everyone's throats, even though no one gives a toss about it, but they're trying to expand that and make that a bigger competition. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Josh, what do you think about the sort of the salary caps and the other ideas with this?
I agree with you. I think it's too far gone for a lot of these ideas to be put into place. With everything all considered, I just think it's too hard to try and make these bigger teams spend less because they're so far ahead of everybody else with their finances. What have they got to gain for the league or any other competition by offering less money for players? Because at the end of the day, the Premier League will also see it as that they're trying to attract the bigger players from the bigger leagues, the other leagues, like your Mbappe's, your Haalands. They want them to come to the Premier League so that they can then get more television rights, get more money back into the club, because they're going to be seen more around the world, so they can have a bigger fan base. So I just don't see how there can be anything put into place to make it a more even playing field. It's hard. I honestly don't know what there can be done to make it feel like everybody's in the same boat and fighting for the same thing in the same level playing field. I just don't see it.
I mean, I guess for me, I would say that we're in my opinion anyway, I don't think that the idea is to get to the point where we've got a level playing field. I don't think that works because in every sport, in every competition, there is always going to be teams that have more resources, more money, and are therefore better. And then it's the challenge of those smaller clubs to do something different to try and compete with them, which is what we've obviously seen Leicester do over the course of the last sort of 5 or 6 years. But the problem is that, as you say, Josh, the desire to bring in those big name players, and it's not helped by things outside interferences such as player agents, because they're just like the disease, the poison in football, those guys, especially fucking Mina Raiola. So, and the problem is that this desire, this fan desire as well. I mean, we're part of the problem as well. We want to see, personally, I want to see people like Haaland and Mbappe. I want to watch them on a Saturday night on Match of the Day. But in order for that to happen, because of the market the way it is, you need the clubs to have an absolute shit ton of money to make those sorts of transfers happen. So it's kind of a vicious circle. You either want the clubs to be run properly on a slightly more even kilter, but with less quality players, and then they have less success in Europe and, the other things that go along with that. Or you say, no, we need those players in the Premier League because we want to make it a better product. So it's a very fine balancing act for me. And I don't know I don't think that there is a way of actually balancing it out. I think you either come down very hard on one side or very hard on the other. I don't think there's a middle ground there.
Problem is, although football's a sport, it's an entertainment business. And, you have like your Tom Cruises on high money because they're actors that people want to watch. And it's the same with footballers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it's supply and demand. Absolutely. I guess it's important to say actually that the Premier League today did introduce some additional rules and regulations, including a new owners' charter, which is supposed to stop future attempts to join a breakaway Super League. Now, this is all kind of quite new today, so I've not had a great deal of time to look into this. But in essence, the Premier League has now put in place a new set of measures to stop any future attempt of a breakaway division, which would include additional rules and regulations, which all clubs must sign up to, or all club owners rather, will have to be signing up to this and committing to the core principles of the competition. So, and it's also like breaches of these rules of this charter will be subject to very significant sanctions. And on that topic, we still haven't seen or heard if there's going to be any sanctions for this attempted breakaway for the ESL. I mean, do we think that they're hoping this is just going to go away, and they hope that the fans will be happy with just the changing of the rules will be enough to circumvent any desire to have points penalties and huge fines, that sort of thing?
Well, the fans seem to be the only ones that care about it anymore. It seems to have just been swept under the rug.
It definitely has that feel to me as well. Bram, what do you think? Would you still prefer to see some form of sanction or penalty brought in?
100%. I would as well. 100%. They should do.
Yeah.
What would you guys like to see? What do you think is? Because there's been a lot of arguments and a lot of talk about what you don't want to do is hurt the fans, and it's like, well, hang on a minute. If you whatever you do to the club is going to hurt the fans in some way, shape or form. Because if the club gets fined, they'll just pass that fine on to the fans in some way, whether it be hiking ticket prices or merchandise, etc., etc. if you hit them with a points deduction, that's going to hurt the fans because it's, their club and they care about them, and it potentially could mean the difference between getting in the top 4 or not, or in Arsenal's case, avoiding relegation if they get hit with a big point deduction. So I don't know. I don't know where I come down on this. I want to see sanctions, but I don't know, again, where this line is, because if you go too hard with them, I just don't know. I really don't.
I think City should be deducted 20 points.
Well, I think that for Arsenal would be enough for relegation, so that would be quite amusing if nothing else. But I mean, personally, I think this whole thing at the weekend was just Man United fans doing it because they foresaw Liverpool turning up and winning and handing Man City the title, and they were like, "Fuck that, that's not happening." But I think this is still an important first step, though. This is, we said on the show last week that we were keen to see the government getting involved, or certainly the rule makers, so the Premier League, doing something to start protecting and changing the way that owners are run. So I think this is an important first step, but I guess until we know the exact details of this, we're not likely to know whether it's going to have any kind of material impact. But it will be interesting to see if we hear anything from the top six clubs about this, and whether they are happy about this or not. And also what Mr. Perez might say about this as well, because as far as I know, he's still clinging on to the fact that these clubs are not allowed to quit the ESL. So God knows what that's going to happen.
There was a petition signed by United fans to get the government involved with the ownership of United, and it reached over 100,000 signatures. So I believe
it's got to be talked about in Parliament.
It has to be talked about in Parliament, so it'll be interesting.
Well, as we know, they've got nothing else to do because they're currently talking about Boris Johnson's renovation of his flat or something. So maybe it'll be a welcome distraction for Boris to talk about the ownership of Man United. Josh, just finally to round off this, come to you, Josh, about your feelings as a whole about this ESL. When you heard about this news as a Newcastle fan, obviously I appreciate that Newcastle's recent history has not been brilliant with relegation, etc. But it wasn't that long ago that you were up near the top, and you would definitely include Newcastle in the top 6 clubs in England chat. So what was your overriding feelings when you saw all of that stuff going on?
Well, it started off with me when they were doing, I think it was Project Bigger Picture or whatever it was that they had to begin with, when they had this concept that those clubs in the Premier League can't get relegated. And I just think for me as a Newcastle fan, I think that's what impacted our takeover of the club. Because I think these big 6, as they call them, clubs don't want another team to take any piece of their pie. Like if we were taken over by these Saudi owners that are meant to be 100 times richer than the Man City owners, or whatever ridiculous stat it was. Imagine all the players that we could have potentially brought to the club. How many more games on Sky BT would be watched for Newcastle games compared to the others? They don't want anybody else to have a part of what they've already got, because they've got it good. And why would they want anyone else to have it? So for me to see them thinking, oh yeah, we're just going to make our own Super League, it's just typical, like what you can imagine at school, like all the popular kids going off and having their own parties. They're doing everything over here because they don't need anybody else. That's what it feels like, that they're bored of the Premier League now. They've done all that they can do. Well, apart from Tottenham. Sorry, Fran. But but like I said, what else have most of those teams got to do in the Premier League now, really? Because City can afford to buy 200 million defenders every season, whereas Newcastle can just scrape by getting a player who was relegated last year. And for me, I just think it's just going to be a matter of time until something else comes along that they think's good, and it's going to be off again. Then this whole thing's just going to go around in circles, unless there is change of ownership. But it needs to be maybe like how Bayern have it, and that's why they weren't included. That it's a 51% majority owned by fans, and the rest of them, but that they all have a say. And I think that would be the only way that it may become a positive thing from this. But if not, then I'll just be waiting until the next big thing comes along.
Yeah, I mean, this has been 3 years in the making. So, and given how Mr. Perez has been talking, I highly doubt that he's going to let this drop without a fight. So, as you say, this is going to come back at some point, unless something is put in place to prevent it. So, it will be interesting to see. But I think at least now the fact the owners know how the fans feel, so there can be no doubt about the reaction that will happen if this attempts a third time. I mean, there'll be freaking riots. The stadiums will be on fire, I think, if it happens a third time. So, right, okay. Well, that concludes all the chat for this week. So we have, as always, 2 things left to do. And the first one is this. Down the stat, man.
I did try and find a Newcastle one for you, Shearer, but they weren't very good reading.
Mate. Never is.
So I've gone for no team have conceded more Premier League goals from outside the box this season than Sheffield United with 11. One other team is joint. Any ideas who they might be?
I mean, I'd find it quite funny if it was Newcastle.
It's not Newcastle.
Thank the Lord. That would just be kicking me while I'm down.
I mean, it's got to be one of the teams down the bottom, isn't it? So, like West Brom, maybe?
New. It's not one of the bottom 3.
I'm going to go Arsenal.
No.
I will go with Southampton.
No.
Nice. None of you.
The answer is Crystal Palace.
Oh.
I say Christ. I would have got that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not an obvious one. It's definitely a.
God's sake, guys!
Come on,
You
guys.
get that?
Even I know that.
You not remember all those outside the box goals?
I don't even remember a Crystal Palace game this season.
Right. So now for the Football with Fran season 2. Now, it's important to remember that Josh has already played this game once this year, and he beat me. So I'm quite glad that I'm not in line to be the first person to lose to the same guest twice. So Dan is going to hold the line for us. It is 5-2. Did we get a judge ruling on that last week? Is it 5-2 to the guests?
Yeah.
It is. Right. Okay, then. Well, come on, Dan. Make it 5-3, please.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 80s and Football with Fran.
That jingle gets me every time.
It's genuinely the best 20 quid I've ever spent.
It's like a mix between like a breaking news channel and an 80s game show. It's fantastic.
And it's just me, like, welcome back to Football with Fran.
Just waiting for you to like shuffle some papers around and be like, right.
You have no idea how long it took me to find that. I was going through a website with all these jingles. I must have gone through about 25 pages of them, and I found this one. I was like, yes, this is the one. Take my money.
Right. Okay. Well, everyone knows how the game works, so let's begin. The first player is Yakubu, and he's played for 12 clubs.
Jesus.
If you get all 12, I'll give you the money myself.
So, Shearer, you're up first. How many do you think you can name?
3.
Dan?
I don't even know if I can name 3.
Looking at this list, I don't even know if I can pronounce 3. You saying?
I kind of want to go. I think I'm going to lose you, but I think 4.
Ooh, girl. Shearer?
You go, hun. You do you, hun.
Go on,
You
Han.
for that.
Right, well then, Dan.
Blackburn.
Yep. Imagine if I was like, no.
Well, I feel like this one. I can't remember if he played for these or not. Pompey.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just 2 more to go.
Oh, that's it.
I was really hoping that he would say 5.
Right, fabulous.
gonna-
Halfway there, mate.
I don't have 4.
He genuinely doesn't.
Newcastle?
I've only got 2 that are written down.
Give over.
No, absolutely not.
What was your third?
Well, you actually said Blackburn. I completely forgot he played for Blackburn, but I would have had he played for Middlesbrough
Yes.
and Everton.
Yes.
Oh, Everton. Bollocks. Yeah, I knew that.
Oh Christ!
Well, I would have lost either way. Maccabi Haifa.
He played for, and then what's that one?
For God's sake. Why don't people just play for normal teams? Hapoel Kfar Saba.
Pompey, Middlesbrough, Everton, Leicester, Blackburn Rovers,
Gangzhou.
Al
Rayyan.
Reading.
Come back from the Saudi Arabia for Reading.
And what's that one?
Kayserispor. I'm guessing that's Turkey.
And then Coventry.
As you do.
That is a very well-travelled man. I'd love to see his passport. It's got a lot of stamps.
Right. Yeah, so Shearer wins that one after a horrendous attempt by Dan. Second player is Michael Owen.
Oh, okay.
5
Ugh.
clubs.
How many?
5.
Is it your turn first, Dan?
Yeah.
Dan.
I believe I can do all 5.
Oh, damn.
Oh, I thought that you'd both be able to get. I thought you'd both be able to get 4. But I thought the 5 might stump one of you.
No, I think you could do that, Dan, easy.
To be fair, Chris in his notes to me put both should get 4, but the 5th one might stump them.
No, I reckon I know which one you reckon as well. Go on, have it, Dan.
Real Madrid.
Yeah.
Newcastle.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure Shearer loved.
Hate him.
Hey.
United.
Yeah.
Liverpool.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the one that Chris thought would be stumped on is Stoke.
Woo!
Yeah.
Not all round, I don't think, in this quiz. Well done.
No, I don't think we have.
I mean, it was only 5, but well done.
Chris, you're telling me you don't have a jingle for somebody getting all of the names of the clubs?
I mean, do you
I'll
want
be
us
honest, I wasn't expecting it to.
We can play the football with Fran.
It's probably never going to happen again.
Yeah, all right, just do this again.
Oh, good. Right, 1-1. Happy days. Well done, Dan.
Thank you.
Third one is Ashley Cole.
Oh, God.
Played for 6 clubs. Shearer, you're up first.
I'm going to go 4.
Oh, you go for it, mate. I only knew 4.
All right, name them.
Arsenal,
Yeah,
Chelsea,
yeah,
LA Galaxy,
yeah.
Roma.
Yeah, smashed it. Well done.
Nice.
I'm surprised you didn't get that. The 6th is hard, but I'm surprised you didn't get the 5th, Dan.
Yeah.
You didn't need to read
Bless him, he
the
didn't
other
try.
ones out.
So Arsenal, Crystal Palace, Chelsea, Roma, LA Galaxy, Derby.
Oh, Derby.
Derby. Right, next one is Paolo Di Canio, and he has played for 10 clubs.
Legend.
I don't even know how to pronounce half the players' names, let alone where they've played. Dan, you're first.
4.
I mean, that wasn't a confident 4, but I'll go with it. Shearer.
I'd go 5.
Oof, girl.
Oh. Is he played 4?
10.
Oh, God. I thought I was doing well with 4.
Right,
I can't name more than 5.
Right, go on then.
Lazio,
Yes.
Charlton,
Yes.
Middlesbrough,
Christ, I'm having to. No.
Ah,
Thank God.
Middlesbrough is not on this list.
No, he did not play for Middlesbrough.
I
Sorry.
had Milan, Sheffield Wednesday, Celtic, and West Ham.
Yeah. So how do you say that? Tanana,
Tanana, I think that is.
Oh, no.
No, so Juventus, Napoli, Celtic, Sheffield Wednesday, West Ham, Charlton Athletic. What was that?
Lazio.
And then Cisco Roma.
Cheers, Shearer.
I'll do anything, mate. I'm just a nice guy. Just like to share.
So, what's that? 2-2.
2-2.
Ooh,
Decider.
someone's usually won by now. This is a great round. Right, and the last one is James Beattie.
Yeah.
He's played for 9 clubs.
God. It's me, isn't it?
No, Shearer first.
No, did you not just go?
No,
for it?
I went first on the last one.
I'll start with a solid 3.
Okay.
You can. I'll give you the chance to win it. You can have it.
Oh, you're too nice, Shearer.
Sheffield United.
Yeah.
Crystal Palace.
Oh God, you could have won it.
Did I cock it up? Crystal Palace. No way.
No.
No.
You absolute helmet.
Oh, did he play for Celtic and Southampton as well?
No.
Oh, is it Rangers? Oh, okay, I would have cocked it up anyway.
Oh, that's an own goal, that one.
That was awful, wasn't it? I
Good
could have sworn he played
Lord.
for Crystal Palace.
I'll celebrate it all the same. Doesn't bother me. Bring on
You
Fran
sounded
for
so
the hat
confident
trick.
with the Palace.
Bro, I used to sign him on LMA Manager 2007.
Are we
What a game.
gonna get Shearer on again before the end then, so he can get a hat trick in this?
Yeah, I got to beat Fran at her own game.
Yeah, that'll be easy. Easy.
Oh dear. Well, Shearer has come on and he has dominated. He has completed the Grand Slam.
Complete it, mate.
Well, anyway, it was.
Did you know? Did you know like 3? Or did you just send it to me on a silver plate and I cocked it up?
There was a bit of reverse psychology, but there was also a thought that I only know 2. So
Okay. Well, that's a little bit better. I won, apparently.
Oh dear. Well, Shearer, as always, massive pleasure to have you on. Thank you for joining us to talk and whinge about the state of English football right now.
Anytime for you guys, anytime.
What a guy. What a guy. And yes, exciting news for us, though, Dan and Fran. We were just saying that in 2 weeks today, we'll be able to record in the same place again.
We get to go back to Chris's house.
Yeah, and then a week after that, the season finishes.
Euros, though.
Exactly. We'll be here for the Euros, don't you worry. Right, as always, thank you very much for everyone listening. Do like and share us around. Get us all over the place. Our listening numbers have been really, really good over the past little while, so thank you everyone for your support, and we hope to keep entertaining you in the coming weeks. So all that's left for me is to say goodbye, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.